we're recording in case anybody is not here who would like to be able to access the information later. All right, folks coming in. All right, well, welcome, folks.
Still let them get in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Good idea. Good idea. Looks like they're in now. Well, folks, welcome in tonight. My name is Jennifer Jones. I am the Family Engagement Consultant for State Support Team 13. We serve Butler, Claremont, Hamilton, and Warren counties. And I'm joined tonight by Dr. Mona Burtz-Beatty. She's a special ed consultant with with SST 13. Also, Christine Nestrick is here, one of our colleagues, is a special ed consultant. And Melissa Salazzo will be joining us in a few minutes. She is the career technical consultant with our group. So you've got quite a group here tonight, but I am going to pass things over to Dr. Burtz-Beatty and let her start with just an overall explanation of the special education process. Mona, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, I think I have sharing rights, if I'm not mistaken. So I am going to share my screen so we can get started. If we can start off with people kind of putting their names in the chat, that would be great. So I know who's showing up as parents. And thank you for such a lovely welcome. I'm going to try to share my screen. Welcome this evening, and we're glad that you found time to spend with us. I think I'm sharing now, maybe. Am I sharing? Awesome. Okay. I'm going to set my own clock because I believe I have 30 minutes, correct, Jennifer? Dr. Jones, and she's going to keep me on a good timer, but I'm also going to time myself.
30 minutes is good. I'll give you like the 26-minute warning.
Awesome. So we are going to do a gallery walk through a resource that we have with the department, and that resource is called the Evaluation Roadmap. And so in preparing this gallery walk, I wanted to be in the mind of guardians and parents and wanting to make sure that I took a topic and made it very user-friendly in trying to explain the contents of this document, and knowing that there's a lot of rich content in this document, but also wanted to make sure that it was user-friendly and easily understandable. You will see a lot of codes in the document, and so you can take your phone if you would like. So as I'm talking about a document, you can take your phone and you can scan the code. And so when you scan the code, that you can pick up that document, and it will take you to a link on the Ohio Department and Workforce webpage, so you can access that document. And then also, I know materials will be made available to you all at a later date and time. So I wanted to start off with some questions first. So what is the evaluation roadmap? That seems like a basic question that we should start off with. So to start, this was a document that was developed, and it's a basic introduction resource to help parents and guardians navigate the educational process for students with disabilities under IDEA. And so I want to specify the term IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, because we have different ways in which we can identify students for disabilities. One way could be through what we call the Rehabilitation Act of 504. We also have the American Disabilities Act. So we have different federal government acts in which we can identify students for various disabilities. And schools, in order to get an individualized education plan or program, some of you may have heard of that terminology, that comes under a specific federal law, which is IDEA. And to come up under IDEA, there's some specific rules and regulations that you have to follow. And so because of that, this particular document was developed to help navigate that process. And so that's why I'm stressing the term IDEA. And so when we think about what this document is specifically related to those regulations. So those things include processes for requesting additional help if your child is struggling just in general. You're feeling like, hey, my kid is struggling with math or science. And it doesn't just have to be academic behaviors, but it could be, you know what, my kid is really struggling with relationships. Maybe there are some behavioral struggles in school. The kid could be fighting or arguing, or maybe the kid is having some social emotional problems. Maybe they're not making friends in schools, or maybe they are withdrawn in school. So whatever those problems are that are happening in school that you may want some help around, you can request some help. So this document talks about those procedures and practices. It also talks about processes for asking for help if you think that your child may have a disability and you want to know, how do I go about getting some help or some services in that regard? This document also talks about the procedures and the distinctions between preschool and school age. So when we're talking about preschool, we call that early childhood, because there's some different processes for kids who are in preschool. And when we're looking at kids who are not quite in school age yet, there are some distinctions between how do you access services for those younger kiddos as opposed to kids who are in school age. And we look at school age starting at kindergarten. And so what are some of those distinctions when I'm looking for supports in that area? As a parent or guardian, you may have kids both in preschool and you may have kids who are also in school age. And then there's also some services and supports that are available for kids before they start preschool. So this document also explains what those things are. This document talks about procedures for determining eligibility. Just because we are making requests and we want some help, there are procedures for how do we decide what students may be struggling, intensifying enough to require specially designed instruction to say they have a disability. Just because you're struggling and having some challenges in school does not mean that you have a disability. There are lots of times that we can struggle and interventions can help support us. And just because we struggle does not mean that you have a disability. And we want to be very careful that we're not over-identifying kids with having that heavy label of having a disability if they don't have a disability. And we can provide good quality instruction and interventions to address those concerns as opposed to over-labeling kids with a disability. So we have processes and procedures in place to try to protect from over-identifying students as well. Then we have procedures for developing that education plan. So if we identify students as having a disability, then we should have a plan to address what those concerns are. And that's what that education plan is for. So after we've identified those concerns or those areas in which we have identified the student may have a disability in, then we want to have a plan to say, how do we address those areas? And the goal would be to write a good enough education plan, which is that individualized special education plan, so that we can not only hope to address those areas of disability, but the goal of an individualized education plan for most of our students would be to hopefully get them off of the individualized education plan. That is our hope, especially if we are addressing these needs early enough. The goal is to graduate kids off of that IEP. That is our ultimate goal. And then we have procedures for implementing that plan. What does it look like? We've written the plan. Now, how do we go about implementing it so that that student is receiving that service in this optimal of a location as possible? We call that their LRE, that least restrictive educational environment. So where are we going to put those services? How often are we going to deliver those services and support? Who's going to provide them? And what manner are they going to be provided? The timelines are very important. And so that means, when are we going to do this? When are we going to start implementing those services? How long are those services going to go for? How often are we going to look at when we're delivering those services? And last but not least, what are your rights as a parent or guardian? Because you have rights in this process. This is your child and this is a partnership. So overall, this is that purpose of that roadmap. So it's to explain to you this very complicated process, because again, we do this every day. This is our job. And it's not that you wouldn't understand the process, but it's kind of like, this is what we do. So we develop work jargon. We have a lot of acronyms. And so we do this every single day. And as a stranger to the process, we realize that it can be difficult not knowing the work jargon. And so this particular document is to make this work very easy for you so that you can partner, so that you can advocate for your child, so that you can ask good questions, and so that you can know what the process is, so that you can participate in very meaningful ways. And again, so that you can advocate for your child. I do want to be very clear that this document is not all encompassing. Okay. It walks you through the very basics. And that's why I use the word basic introduction. There's so much more resources on the department's website. There's supplemental resources that go with this document. At the end of this presentation, I've added some more documents to some resources for you to use. The department has also developed a whole website of additional resources for parents that you can leverage. Dr. Jones is also one of our parent family engagement personnel on our SST team. So she's a wealth of knowledge that you can also go to. You can reach out to our SST for more information and resources. So just because this is a document for you that walks you through the process, this isn't the only document that you can go to give you more information, because again, this is a broad introduction, but there are very much more resources available to help you truly understand this process. So what the document looks like when you go through that evaluation process, there is something called an evaluation team report. And so in that evaluation, what that looks like is this team is going to do this comprehensive evaluation. And in school, that looks like a bunch of assessments that we give, which is very different from a medical assessment. And the purpose of that is to identify patterns of strengths and weaknesses from an academic perspective. And that means we're a school, so we're looking at it academically. And from academics, we are looking at behavior as it relates to academics. We're looking at functioning skills relating to academics, meaning how is the kid functioning in school, socio-emotional relating to academics. All of these behaviors are looking at how is these things affecting them as it relates to them learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to do math, learning how to function in a school setting. So we're looking at those strengths, and we're looking at it as, are these things preventing them from growing academically when we compare them to their same age developing peers, or comparing them to the growth in the curriculum? And that becomes very challenging sometimes for you guys as parents to understand, because that's our measuring stick. Parents are looking at the measuring stick of, this is just my child, and I'm looking at their independent growth. Schools have to look at the growth compared to other children. So we have a different measuring stick. That measuring stick is saying, here's the expectations of where we want kids in this age or this grade level group. So our measuring stick is a little bigger. And so sometimes there could be a disconnect between what you guys as parents are looking for growth and what we as schools are looking for growth. So our measuring stick is a little bigger. And so there is some expected ranges in which kids are performing, where for parents, which makes sense, you're looking for optimal growth, where for us, there is some there's a little bit of a range of growth expectations, because we're looking at age, we're looking at grade level. So sometimes there's a little difference in what that looks like. And so when we talk with you all, we have to navigate that difference because of what we have to look at. So the ETR is that evaluation, and we're looking, can kids access instruction? And kids who are struggling with intervention, with instruction, and we're looking at the things that we put in place, if they're still struggling with that instruction, and with all the interventions that we're putting in place and supports, then if that does not work, we may suspect, and or you as a parent may say, hey, I'm suspecting that with the interventions that you guys are putting in place, with the things I'm doing at home and all the things that I'm putting in place, I suspect that my child may have a disability. And if we go through all of those processes and procedures, then what happens is that we go through that evaluation, we suspect that there is a disability. The data shows, yep, there is a disability. It confirms what everyone is suspecting. We've done all of these things. We put all of these things in place. Let's develop an education plan. And then that equals, here is the plan. This child is requiring specially designed instruction, because what we're saying is everything that we've provided in the general education setting, with all the additional interventions and supports that we have given the child, that when we compare him and her to their same age peers, or the growth that we expect them to make in the curriculum, that with all the additional supports and resources we've put in place, they still haven't made those gains. Therefore, we think they have a disability. So that becomes that long process in which this is what that document explains, what all of those steps are. That sounds very long and laborious for a parent, but those are what some of those steps are laid out for, because not only are you guys requesting, let's evaluate, the federal government and the law says school districts are supposed to do this process as well, but we also want to make sure that we're not over identifying students in that process. For eligibility, we cannot do the Oprah model. You get one, you get one, and you get one. So again, we want to make sure that this process is driven by data. We want to make sure that we are adhering to evidence-based strategies and systems. So that's why we have this document, to explain it to parents that here's what we have to follow, but you also have rights in that process as well. So we want to partner with you, but we want to make sure that you're understanding what that process is on our end. So you're not looking at us as the school district us, that's what I'm saying, a universal us, as neglecting to do something, so that you understand it and understand what your rights are in that process as well. And I talked about eligibility. When we're talking about eligibility from a school perspective, they have to look at eligibility as saying that you cannot determine that the kid is going to qualify for services due to a lack of instruction. So attendance becomes a huge issue for schools. They have to rule that out. It can't be because the student has missed a lot of school days. It can't be because this we're using language. If the student doesn't speak the language, we can't use language as a reason to qualify them for special education. We can't say because they missed a lot of instruction or they wasn't provided quality instruction. So there's a lot of things that the team got to make sure they rule out, so that we're not over identifying for special education. So the process in and of itself has some requirements that were put in place by the federal government and the state to make sure that teams aren't over identifying. And that's what this document also helps to explain to parents and guardians about what that process is. And our key goal is to make sure that kids require specially designed instruction on top of that to qualify for a special education. The next question that I thought people would ask is, why was the evaluation roadmap developed? One of the biggest reasons that it was developed was because schools want to build partnerships with families. Ohio has a plan around moving forward, especially after COVID. We wanted to make sure that we partner with families. We want to build better partnerships. No one knows kids better than their guardians and their parents and their families. And so we don't want it to be an us against families. It's all of us together wanting what's best for kids. And so in our state plan, part of the principles is that we believe in students. We believe that the time is now to rise the tides in education and learning. We believe in partnerships, and we believe in learning and adopting. We know that a child's development is profoundly shaped by the relationships in their families. And we know that one of the best things that we can do is strengthen our relationships with families. And the best way to do that is to be transparent and give you all the resources that you all need to partner with us. We have to open our doors, and we have to give you what you need to advocate appropriately for your children. And so the best way to do that is to make these processes very transparent, give you the knowledge that you need to make sure you understand what these processes are, so you can partner in these processes with us. So we are trying to be as transparent about what that education process is, so that you know how to better advocate for your children, and more importantly, that you understand the process. So that's why this was developed. What if my child has a private diagnosis? And so we do know that the medical model exists, and so that parents and guardians, you all can go out and get a medical diagnosis. You can go to Children's Hospital, you can go to private agencies, your private doctors, and so they also do evaluations of children. And so you can come back with medical diagnosis of children as well. There is a difference, however, between a medical diagnosis and a school-based diagnosis. And so I have given you guys this document that talks about the difference between a medical diagnosis versus an educational eligibility. And that is the difference. I don't know if you've heard those two terms. If you look at this slide carefully, you'll see diagnosis versus eligibility. In schools, we do not make diagnoses, we make eligibility, and that is the biggest difference. When we talk about IDEA, when we get our funding from, we are getting funding based off of eligibility for services. We are an educational setting, and we make decisions based off of education. The medical model makes decisions based off of diagnosis. We do assessments, they do diagnosing, and so there is a difference. We do have the final decision in a lot of those things because we are being paid to make educational based decisions as the educational setting. We legally have to look at the medical assessments. We have to interpret those under, however, educational guidelines, because we are the place providing educational instruction. This document is a really good document that helps parents and guardians to kind of understand the difference between a diagnosis and an eligibility determination where we're doing assessments, because we're talking about instruction where they're talking about medical. And so this is a really good document. Again, it's not necessarily an exemplar, but it kind of helps parents to understand the difference, because a lot of times you may go to your medical physician or somewhere else and you get this diagnosis and you're like, hey, my kid has this disability, give me my IEP. And we're like, wait, we got to take some steps back. We have to go and do some assessments, and we have to decide if they qualify for us. And you're like, wait, why are you putting my kid through all of this? I just told you, I just took them to the doctor and they have this, they qualify. And we're like, I hear you, but they qualify under the medical model. We have to do things under an educational eligibility. We have a whole separate process, and we have to follow this process. And that's what we have to follow under IDEA. Now, we will take these things into consideration in our practice, but we have a whole different process that we have to follow under the government. And so I'm hoping that this document can help you to better understand what those two processes are and why it feels like you're going through some redundancy. The thing is that what we are trying to do, and I think we've made a lot of gains, in working with the medical model. We're trying to work together. The two systems are trying to talk more and trying to understand each other more, because there could be good balance and synergy between the two. Because sometimes what I've seen in best practices is that when parents do qualify for both systems, I've seen parents, for example, if kids qualify for OT services, occupational therapy and PT services, sometimes they'll get their school-based OT and PT if they qualify under school-based services through assessments. They'll get those services through the school year. And also, if they qualify under a medical model, they can get services in the summer from the medical model. But please understand, those are two different qualifying systems, and you may have to work within both of those systems, but they can be complementary to each other. But you just have to understand that they're separate processes, and they do work together, and they can work together, but you do have to do two separate assessments, even though they can use each other's data. The next question is, what if I disagree? And yes, as a parent and guardian, you absolutely have the right to disagree. You can disagree with the evaluation outcome. That is your right. The schools can determine, here's what our data says. This is the data that we're making, because the school can say, we don't agree. They can also say, we don't think your child has a disability. Based off the data, because these are data-based decisions, we're not moving forward with an evaluation. Well, I disagree, and what are my rights? And so you do have rights as a parent, and this document talks about what your rights are as a parent. It very explicitly talks about the things that you can do if you disagree. It talks about the steps that you can take. It's very explicit about it. And again, you can reach out to parent mentors in your district. You can reach out to SST 13 that can tell you, here's the different places that you can go to that can tell you what your rights are if you disagree. Within the ETR process, if you disagree with the determination, if you get to the evaluation process, you can write a dissenting opinion and it can be attached. Now, here's the thing. If you disagree with the evaluation report, that does not stop the team from coming up with that eligibility decision. Once the team makes that decision, again, that's the team decision. You can write a dissenting opinion, and you can also request an independent evaluation if that is your choice. The district would give you a list of places to go. So there's some more processes in that, but this document can unpack and will unpack what your rights are as a parent, because you do have the right to disagree, and there are steps that you can follow. Now, your right to disagree doesn't stop the districts from also making a decision, but it just gives you some other recourses that you can take, but it does not stop them from making their decision. It gives you more recourse and some additional things that you can do also, but it doesn't mean that you stop the ETR process. You do have the right to reject an IP. You have the right to reject the initiation of services. There are lots of things that you can do. And so this document clearly explains those rights. And so in the roadmap, it tells you what those rights are too, around consenting, taking your consent back. So you do have a lot of rights in that regard as well. So that's why these documents are very important. And that's why we're making these documents very transparent to you as a parent, so that, again, you can advocate for your child and that you can be fully participatory in these practices. So I wanted to make sure I kind of gave you that global overview, and I think I have about 7 minutes. What do you have in my time for me, Jennifer? Do you have the same thing? Because I would
7
give you.
minutes, yep.
Okay, but in my 7 minutes, I'm going to try to give a little bit more detail. I wanted to get those global picture things in because I wanted you to have that big picture. And so now I want to talk about the relationship between the ETR and IEP with my last 7 minutes. And so I'm going to dig a little bit into a little bit more detail for my last couple of minutes. So I just want to talk about that request part really quickly. So I want to hit a few more details for my little time left. So if you suspect your child has a disability, you can request a special education evaluation. That's part of the roadmap. This does not need to be in writing. However, it is good to document the date of the request for your own records. It's always good to have it in writing, even though it doesn't have to be. I just find that the more that you can have those documents, the easier it is to keep that timeline in order. For preschool, when you as the parent contact that special education staff in your district, you can initiate the request for that evaluation if you determine that preschool services and programs best fit your child's individual needs. Once that request is made, the school district has 30 days to respond from the date that they received that request, okay? So you got to remember, it's when they get it, not from when you had said it, it's when they get it, and they time stamp it. So they have 30 days. When they get it, they get the chance to make two decisions. And one of the two decisions is we either agree and suspect or we don't suspect. So they can call you in and have a meeting with you, and they can do a profile check. They can say, here's the data. We're going through data and having a data conversation. And at that meeting, they can decide we either suspect or we don't suspect. If they suspect, they can move forward with an evaluation and follow timelines. If they do not suspect, and they can decide that we don't suspect at this time and we do not want to move forward with an evaluation. And that's just the right that they have. Once they do that, they will give you a copy of your procedural rights, and they can tell you what your next steps are in the process, because you can disagree, you can still request another evaluation. They may say, hey, but they're going to make that decision based off of data. They're going to come to the table with data. They're not just going to say, hey, we're not doing this. They're going to have a data conversation with you. They're going to look at data based off of how the student is performing, curriculum-based things of that nature. They may want to continue to do interventions. They cannot use interventions, however, to delay an evaluation. They can't just do interventions forever, but they will try to do interventions because that is part one in that process. And like I said, if the district suspects a disability, they'll move forward with an evaluation, but they'll have a meeting and discuss that. If they decide they are going to move forward with an evaluation, they have to have your consent to move forward. There's some different processes for a reevaluation, and for the sake of time, we won't go into those. We're just going to talk about the initial process. And so they have to have your consent for that evaluation. Before they do an evaluation, they will do a planning, meaning they will plan what that evaluation will look like, and they'll talk about the assessments that they're going to do, and that's for both preschool and for school age. They're going to tell you ahead of time, here are the types of assessments that we want to conduct. Here are the things we want to do with your child. They must tell you that before you give consent to that, because you need to know what they're going to do with your child. Now, they don't have to tell you the names of all the tests, but they're going to tell you what types of things they're going to do, what the purpose of those tests are, and what type of information they're going to gather for those tests. So they will tell you all of that information. They're going to tell you when they're going to come back together, and they're going to give you the results of that data. They're going to use the performance, your child's performance on that data, to determine if they're eligible or not for special ed. So once all those assessments are done, they're going to have you come back, and they have to do a comprehensive assessment. So there's going to be other team members there, depending on what the concerns are. So the concerns are going to drive the assessment. So if you're concerned with literacy, they're going to have people there who are literacy specialists. If concerns are around math, they're going to have people there who deal with math. If your concerns are behavior, they're going to have someone with behavior. And of course, your teachers, your students' teachers are going to be part of the team, and you, most importantly, are part of that team. Your information about your child is very valuable, and you as a team member is very valuable. Your information to bear is very valuable. Also, depending on the age of the child, their own information, the child will be interviewed as well, and of course they're going to be assessed. So those are part of the information that will be brought to the team as part of that evaluation process. Again, when we're getting to eligibility, when we're talking about some of those eligibility decisions, the team is going to look at all of that data and determine eligibility. It's going to be a database decision. The data will either lead them to determining eligibility using, we have 15 disability categories. Based off of that data, they're going to see if they qualify for one of those, and they will investigate that area based off of what those concerns were. Again, if you disagree, you can say that you disagree, and any team member can also disagree. You're not the only one, but any team member can disagree with the eligibility or any part of that report. And then you can write a statement as such. You can also request an independent evaluation if that's what you want. As I said, just because you disagree doesn't mean that that will stop them from making that decision, but you do have some rights that go along with that disagreement and what are some other actions that you can take at the end. If the team is all in agreement, then they can also then develop that initial IEP. If everyone is in agreement, after the eligibility, what happens is 30 days from determining the child is eligible, an IEP must be put in place. So the team will write an IEP based off of the eligibility of that ETR. The two documents go together. So they will take all the identified needs and strengths from what was in that ETR and develop an individualized education plan. Because if these are the areas of concern, then here's what we're going to do to remediate that. And so that IEP is going to be developed, and they're going to have you come back in for a meeting and talk about, here is the plan. Here's what we're going to try to do. Here are the services we're going to try to offer. But most importantly, here's the specially designed instruction. This is the key piece for eligibility for services. It is the specially designed instruction. That is the key component that requires us to identify children for disability and that qualifies the child for an IEP. If they don't need specially designed instruction, that's the key that they will not qualify. So this is that special instruction that's going to help them access that curriculum. So here's what we're going to provide. This is how it's going to be provided. This is where it's going to be provided. Maybe they're going to get a modified curriculum. Maybe they're going to get modified instruction. This is how much we're going to provide. This is where we're going to provide it. And this is what that instruction looks like. The team members are going to be there. You're going to be told in advance who's going to be there, when they're going to be there, when they're going to show up. You're going to be presented with this IEP. It cannot be implemented until you sign off. Here's what you need to know. If you do not sign that first IEP, that child will not be identified as a student with a disability, and they will go back to that general education setting. So that first initial IEP is very important. If you do not provide consent for that, they cannot get services, and they will go back to general education. And so that, again, that roadmap explains all of those rights and what this whole process is, and what you can do if you disagree or don't agree. And so this kind of is a quick overview of what some of those practices and processes are. And I'm down to 20-something seconds. So major takeaways: interventions and supports are available for struggling students through your school district intervention framework. Struggling does not always equate into a disability, but there are some students who require specially designed instruction to access curriculum, and these students are students with disabilities. Just because a student has a medical disability or a disability through another agency, inclusive of 504, does not mean that they require specially designed instruction through IDEA. Parents have rights and are partners in the process, and everyone is really trying to do what's best for kids. We just have to work through our differences and how we get there. And then there's some additional resources that will be available to you on the website. So there's a whole page full of websites for families and how to access different roadmaps. There's a early childhood and youth department just dedicated for young kiddos. So that's available for you. There's a whole family engagement center, and I know that Jennifer has probably provided many resources on that. And then there's some additional resources for Ohio Transition Roadmap, and then just a host of other little links that we will make available to you. Thank you so much. I have been Mona, and I am done.
Thank you, Dr. Burt Speedy. We really appreciate all your knowledge and your willingness to come in the evening and share with everyone. Mrs. Salazzo, are you here? I thought she was here, but maybe not. Okay, well, I will switch over and share my screen. There's a lot to this process.
Melissa is here. I see her, but her mic isn't.
Is her mic not working?
Yeah. You're
getting big kudos in the chat, Mona. Oh, there she is.
I spotlighted her for you, so I see her, but I don't hear her mic.
I think you're muted.
I'm having problems with my
There
mic.
you go. You're working now.
That's the second time it's done that to me. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, I apologize for being a little late. Had an appointment that ran over, so I apologize. One thing before I get Jennifer to talk about parent mentors and how to find resources in the region, if you guys wouldn't mind signing in for us, we don't um, we don't need the information necessarily to um, shoot. Hold on for just a second. I'm all mixed up now. Got myself discombobulated. I put the link in the chat. Um, we just like to be able to show the Department of Education that we're providing the resources that the region needs. And so if we can just give them a count at the end of the year of how many people were served, that will really help us out. So there's also a question in the form that if you have a question and you want us to reach out to you to fill that out and then give us a way to contact you so we can do that. Otherwise, you can just leave that part blank. So the link in the chat or this QR code will work for you. Let's see, you've already gone through all of these. So the second topic tonight is really just about how to connect with our regional points of contact. So if you have questions or something comes up and you're not sure how to handle it, or you just want more information and you need a resource, there's some people that can help you. So Dr. Jennifer Jones is going to take that part and let you know how to do all those things.
Can you share the slideshow, Melissa? Are you able to do that?
I am. See, I'm all discombobulated because I did not start.
No, you're good. You're good.
There we go. So let me go
Perfect.
back one. Well, we'll get that QR code again in the evening if we need it.
So again, my name's Jennifer Jones, and I work at State Support Team Region 13. And you might kind of be wondering, what is State Support Team? I hear that thrown around a lot, but I'm not sure what that is. So the State Department of Education has 16 regions across the state, and they sort of consider State Support Team as their boots on the ground. We're the people that can, because we're located, in areas across the state, we can get into districts, we can provide help, we can get to families, families can get to us. We're sort of the accessibility point for the State Department of Education. If you were to call the State Department of Education with a complaint, the first thing they're going to say to you is, have you reached out to your state support team? So we just like to make sure that people know who we are and what we do. We serve some high needs districts. We go in and provide some individual training and coaching there. We also provide regional training in special education, positive behavior systems, multi-tiered systems of support, transition, you name it, and we're involved in it, trying to provide support to um, educators, teachers, and principals and central offices across the region so they can best provide services to your kiddos. And I have to tell you, I was a little nervous to take a job like this because I'm one step further removed from kids, but it's so rewarding because when I was in a district, I had, maybe 3,000 kids I was able to help. Now I have like 300,000 kids I'm able to help. So it's very, very rewarding. And I do want to tell you that I live a special education life. Aside from what I do professionally, I have two sons. My oldest son is 18 and he is on the autism spectrum and has a significant visual impairment. And my youngest son is 13 and he has a significant visual impairment. And I am trained to the gills in special education, but I tell you, when it comes to my own boys, my knowledge is out the window. And I have needed people along the way to help me, people to be a sounding board, people to give me ideas. It's like, I can come up with 100 ideas to help somebody else's child, but when it comes to my own kids, it's a foreign land to me. So I 100% understand when families throw their hands up and say, I need help. Because with all of the content knowledge that I have and all the training I have, I've been there. So I just want to provide a couple of avenues for you to get help. And I want to talk about what those different services can provide, because it's a little different what each of us can provide. So the state has the Ohio Parent Mentor Project, and it is an organization through the state of Ohio, and they provide grant funding to districts across the state who choose to have parent mentors in their district. Typically, the grant funding does not completely cover the cost, so that's why not every district in the state has them. This is the website for the Ohio Parent Mentor Project, and there's a link at the top that says Find a Parent Mentor, and you can go in there and it'll ask you for your school district or your zip code or your address, things like that, and you can find out if your school district has a parent mentor. So what does a parent mentor do? They are there to mentor the parents. I know that sounds really kind of cheesy, doesn't it? They mentor the parents. So they are there to provide help to you in the language of special education law, in the processes, and they have a good working knowledge of what goes on in your district because they are there every single day. They can attend meetings with you and sit beside you. They can sometimes give you the questions to ask. They can help you come up with the right wording. They are just a good entry point for help if your district has one. And we have several districts around the Cincinnati area that have parent mentors, but not every district, like I said. So if you have any questions about parent mentors, there are phone numbers and contact information on this website that you can reach out to the folks in Columbus, and they would help you with that. And then if your district has one, like Cincinnati Public that Melissa's pulled up here, it'll have contact information for those parent mentors. And one of the requirements to be a parent mentor is you have to have a child with a disability. So you are going to get to people who understand, people who have been there. They're not gonna laugh at you. Their heart is with you and your children because they are you and your children. So that's just a quick rundown of what parent mentors are. And like I said, if you can connect with any of them, we meet with them several times a year just to make sure if there are any updates coming out of Columbus, make sure that they have the most up-to-date information. And it's all women in our region, but they are the kindest, most sincere, most willing to give people that I think I've been around. So if you ever have the ability to connect with one of those, it's definitely a blessing to your family. Next slide whenever you're ready, Mrs. Salazzo. Thank you. This is my contact information. I'm a family engagement consultant for the region. So what can I do and how is my role a little different than the parent mentors? So um, I do not work for a district. I work for the Department of Education, and I'm housed in Hamilton County, but I serve Butler, Claremont, Hamilton, and Warren counties. Parents call me multiple times a week, and there's usually an issue, and they've gotten my number because they want help. The first thing I do is provide a listening ear, and sometimes after people, lay out their story, they're able to come to their own conclusions, and all they really needed was someone with a heart for what they're going through to listen to them. Sometimes they have basic questions about the law, about special ed law, and if I am comfortable answering them, I am able to answer them, and I'm also able to do research at the state level and provide them with the exact wording from the law and the Ohio Revised Code. Sometimes there is an issue that they want advice for. And while I can't always provide advice, sometimes I can give them the questions to ask, some things that, it's really allowable for them to ask for, some things that, really school districts are not able to provide. And I tell every parent that I talk to, you're going to love some things I'll tell you, and other things you're just going to be so angry, but I'm always going to tell you the absolute truth. And on occasion, only if the parents give me permission. I do not call a district and say, hey, Bobby's mom just called and that's not what I do. But on occasion, I will say to the parent, will you give me permission to reach out to the special ed director on your behalf? I think I could be a little bit of an intermediary for you. And I can call a district and say, hey, I think if you just, had another meeting, or this is really mom's concern, or something like that, if a meeting you had kind of went south, sometimes I can be that middle person for you. It's not very often though. Typically, I'm there to advise parents on, you know, good ways to handle IEP meetings. I often give advice about, send an email and, provide your concerns, and just really practical advice that when you are in the throes of an issue and it's your baby, it's a very passionate thing. And sometimes just a third party to sit there and say, okay, let's take a deep breath and let me help you develop a plan. Um, Sometimes that's super helpful. Now, I am not allowed to go to meetings. I do not act on your behalf or your child's behalf. I am there to act on the state of Ohio's behalf to provide a service to families. So some folks call me and say, I'd really like an advocate for my child. We don't provide advocacy services. We provide information and guidance. But I cannot go into a meeting and, fight for your child and those kind of things. It's a sort of a different role that we play. And some families I hear from once and things are good. They feel better. They're able to get a resolution that they need for their child. And some families, I'm in year 3 and I have a couple families that I talk to every year because they've been pleased with conversations we've had, and it's sort of a, almost a security blanket to know they've got somebody in their corner to listen and be a sounding board, and sometimes just be a critical friend. And that's the service that we provide as family engagement consultants. And that's my email address, jenniferjones@hcesc.org. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Make sure you leave, if there's a different email address you'd like me to contact you at, and a good working phone number, because sometimes it's a quick email that I can send you and say, here's a link to what you're looking for. And other times I need to get on the telephone with you to say, okay, this is what I think I understood from your email, but can you tell me again? Can you give me some more details? Can you send me a copy of your kiddo's IEP so I can look at it, so I can see what, we're talking about? So make sure you leave me a good phone number when you send that email. Mrs. Salazzo, did I hit what you think we were looking for tonight?
Absolutely. So, does anyone have any questions for us while we're on? We have a lot of resources, human resources here on the call tonight from the SST. We do have two parent mentors on. We also have a few people from Cincinnati Public. We have someone from Hamilton County DD. So we have some people here if you have any questions. Let's see. So contact information again. Oh, I'm sorry. April has a question, Jen. What's the difference between a parent advocate and a parent mentor?
So a parent advocate is an outside person. There are some free parent advocates around the state. There are quite a few paid parent advocates, and they come in and their goal is to advocate and push for what you think your child needs. A parent mentor sort of works within the system to help find an understanding between the district and the parent, if that makes sense. Parent mentor is more of a middle person that's going to try to get, what your child needs, what the district thinks they need, and find that happy middle ground to give your kiddo what they need. Where a parent advocate, their job is to come in. They're hired by you. There are some that do pro bono work, but they're hired by you to come in and push the agenda that you think is best for your kiddo. Did that help, April?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to get on the phone anytime that you have a question at all and, give you whatever information that I can. And occasionally I will say that information is outside of my scope. And then I do my best to get you to the people that can answer those questions.
So if you have more questions, pop them in the chat while you're thinking of questions. I'm going to show you the SS13 website. This is our contact list. So even if you forget where these resources are housed or you lost something, if you even Google State Support Team 13, our website address will come up. And then when you get to the website, you'll come to the home page. And we have different information here. We have a newsletter, like an update every month that you will be able to see here. It'll be in the latest from SST 13. And then over here on the contact page are all of everyone on our team. So you've got our email, and then if there's a phone number, it's listed. Now that phone number, I just want you to know it goes to our email. It's one of those new things. We do not have desk phones anymore. So we have a number, but it goes through our email so we can get back in touch with you. So that is there for you. And then all of the resources from the series that we do all year will be housed on this Padlet. And if you're not familiar with Padlet, it's an easy way to just store things. It's kind of like Pinterest, but you can organize things a little differently, and you can share your board, or you don't have to share your board. So this one is shared, and then we'll just go by date here. So tonight, we'll put some other things up here that Dr. Mona talked about, but right here's the link to the evaluation roadmap. I wanted to let you know too that the roadmap is available in different languages. So if you have a friend or you know of a family that might be struggling and they need this roadmap, it's available in all these different languages as well. So I think that's nice and helpful. And some of these languages are hard to translate. So it's great that they've been able to do that. Let's see, the other thing I linked the Parent Mentor Network and then the state support team here as well. And because we are recording the sessions, then I'll put the recording of the session right up here at the top once it's ready. So again, if you had a friend that missed tonight, we had a couple phone calls from people that said they really wanted to be here, but they had a conflict and wanted to make sure we were recording the information. So feel free to share that and share that Padlet around as well. And then we'll just keep adding to it each month. So before we sign off for the evening, any other questions or anything you can think of that you want to ask while we're here? We're happy to help. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us this evening and taking time to listen and ask some questions or just get more information. And we will look forward to seeing you in October. Have a great evening